Have you ever wondered who gave humans the gift of storytelling? What if I told you it was a clever spider? If you can't listen to the full story now, save this episode and follow the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. Anansi and the Box of Stories, Part 1. Long before stories had voices or names, the world was silent. There were no tales of heroes or lessons whispered across generations. All stories were hidden away in a wooden box, held tightly by the sky god Nyame. The people of the earth lived in a world of action and survival, but not imagination. And that, as Anansi saw it, was a problem worth solving. Anansi is not your typical hero. In Ashanti folklore from what is now Ghana in West Africa, Anansi appears as a spider, sometimes as a man, and often as both. He is a trickster, but not cruel. He is curious, but not careless. In fact, Anansi is one of the most important figures in West African storytelling traditions, a symbol of wisdom, creativity, and the power of wit over brute strength. So when Anansi looked up to the heavens and saw that all the world's stories were locked away by Nyame, he decided that this treasure of knowledge needed to be shared. Anansi climbed the tallest tree and spun a web of golden silk that reached the sky. With his many legs and more ideas than most, he made his way to Nyame and politely asked for the box of stories. Nyame laughed. Stories, he said, were not free. If Anansi wanted the stories, he would have to earn them. The sky god gave Anansi a challenge. If he could capture 3 of the most dangerous and elusive creatures on earth, Onini the python, Osebo the leopard, and the deadly swarm of Moboro hornets, then and only then would Nyame surrender the box. The task was monumental. No human or spirit had ever succeeded in such a mission. But Anansi, being small, underestimated, and terribly clever, accepted without hesitation. And what followed was not a battle of strength, but a performance of intellect. In Ashanti culture, this tale has been passed from generation to generation, not just as entertainment, but as a reflection of values. Anansi represents the belief that intelligence and determination can reshape the world. His stories often teach lessons about justice, resourcefulness, and the subtle art of knowing when to speak and when to listen. In this first part of Anansi's journey, we begin to see a world where stories are locked away, but desire and daring begin to shape a new future. In the next part, we'll follow Anansi's clever attempts to catch the wild and cunning creatures that stand between him and the stories of the world. Until then, think about this. What would our world look like without stories? How much of what we know, feel, or dream would simply vanish? Stories are not just for amusement. They are maps of the soul. Anansi and the Box of Stories, Part 2. Anansi returned to Earth deep in thought. He knew that brute force would not help him against the challenges ahead, but he also knew that a sharp mind, the right tools, and a little bit of charm could go a long way. His first target was Onini, the great python who was feared for his strength and cunning. Anansi approached the snake's favorite riverbank with a simple plan in mind. Carrying a long palm branch and speaking loudly to his wife Aso, Anansi pretended to argue. "No, I still think Onini is longer than this stick," he said. "You're wrong," Aso replied. "He couldn't be, not even close." This theatrical exchange caught the attention of Onini, who slithered over with curiosity. "What are you arguing about?" the python asked. Anansi, ever polite, explained that they were trying to decide whether Onini was longer than the palm branch. "Let me help settle it," said Onini. He stretched out beside the stick. Anansi smiled and nodded thoughtfully. "Just stay very still so we can be sure," he said. Then he quickly tied Onini to the stick with vines, wrapping him tightly from head to tail. Before the great snake could react, Anansi had completed his first task. Next came Osebo the leopard. This beast was fast, powerful, and always alert. Anansi knew he could not trick him the same way, so he dug a deep pit along the leopard's path and covered it with leaves and branches. As expected, Osebo fell straight into the trap that night. When morning came, Anansi approached carefully and offered to help the leopard out. "But only if you let me tie you up," he added. "It's for your safety." Osebo, frustrated and trapped, agreed without thinking. Anansi pulled him up with vines, only to bind him again and declare him the second prize. Now only the Moboro hornets remained. These tiny creatures were the most unpredictable of all. A swarm could bring fear to even the bravest, but Anansi had one more idea. He filled a calabash with water and cut a leaf into the shape of an umbrella. He poured some of the water over himself and shouted, "It's raining! Quick, everyone take cover!" The hornets, always seeking shelter from storms, buzzed around in panic. Anansi offered them his calabash as a dry place to hide. As the last hornet flew inside, he sealed the containers tightly with a cork and smiled. With all 3 challenges completed, Anansi spun his web once more and climbed back to the sky. He presented Onini, Osebo, and the Mmoboro to Nyame, who looked on with surprise and admiration. No one had ever succeeded. A spider, of all beings, had done what even gods thought impossible. Nyame kept his word. He handed Anansi the box of stories heavy with magic and memory. From that moment on, stories began to flow through the world like rivers. They entered hearts and homes. They danced in marketplaces and drifted into dreams. And wherever stories were told, Anansi's name would never be forgotten. Anansi and the Box of Stories, Part 3. Anansi descended from the sky with the box of stories tied to his back. As his feet touched the earth, the winds shifted. Birds paused mid-flight. The trees swayed with anticipation. Something had changed. For the first time in history, the air carried more than sound. It carried meaning. Anansi opened the box, and the stories spilled out like light through cracks in darkness. They soared into villages and forests, rivers and deserts. They filled the silence with rhythm, painted the unknown with imagination, and stitched wisdom into the fabric of daily life. There were stories of brave children, foolish kings, kind-hearted animals, clever elders, and mysterious spirits. There were tales to teach, to laugh, to mourn, and to celebrate. From that day forward, the people of Earth began to gather around fires at night, passing on these stories with voices full of life. Elders taught through parables. Parents soothed children with bedtime legends. Communities remembered who they were and imagined what they could become. And every time a story was told, Anansi was there, not in form, but in spirit, reminding us that cleverness and courage are not always loud or large. In Ashanti tradition, and across the African diaspora, Anansi became more than a character. He became a symbol. His stories traveled with enslaved peoples from West Africa to the Caribbean and the Americas, adapting to new cultures but keeping their roots alive. In Jamaica, Anansi stories were told in patois, blending African wisdom with New World resilience. In Suriname, his name echoed in village tales. Through centuries of hardship, these stories became tools of resistance, survival, and identity. Today, Anansi remains a guardian of the spoken word. He is remembered not only in Ghana, but wherever oral traditions are cherished. His tales remind us that even the smallest voice can outwit the loudest threat, that creativity is a form of power, and that sharing stories is an act of healing. So next time you hear a story that makes you laugh or think or dream, remember that it might carry the spirit of a spider who once climbed to the sky. And if you ever feel small in a world that seems too vast, think of Anansi. He did not need strength to change the world, only a clever heart, a bold idea, and a deep belief in the magic of stories. If this tale inspired you, follow the channel for more, like the video to support our work. Leave a comment with your favorite part and save it to listen again whenever you need a spark of wonder.